Hello, my name is Ray. I'm going to be talking about social penetrations theory. This theory is derived from the discipline of psychology, and it was created by two authors, which are Erwin Altman and Dalmas Taylor in the early 1970s. And it aims to explain how relationships can grow in closeness as well as distance. One of the keys in this theory is that of self-disclosure. The definition in the book of self-disclosure is the voluntary sharing of personal history, preferences, attitudes, feelings, values, secrets, etc. with another person. In other words, it's the transparency that you show with another person. Uh, if you choose to self-disclose, you are letting that person in, and you're allowing them to be able to see a little bit into the type of person you are or who you are as a person. So in a sense, you're basically trusting this person enough to let them know about you, and in return, you're allowing them to disclose back. So one of the ways that they do this, in terms of the theory, is the idea of the onion as a multi-layered personality. Um, this is basically what you see in the figure here, and it depicts the different types of layers that we have in our personality. It basically shows the idea of how we choose to communicate and how many layers it takes for a person to be able to understand who we truly are and not who we're just showing to the overall public. Uh, Basically, as you see here, certain things like TV, music, and food would be something that anybody that walks by you who wants to talk to you would be able to find out relatively easy, as opposed to the actual way you see yourself, like some kind of insecurities, if you see yourself as overweight, or if you see yourself as ugly, or if you see yourself as beautiful. Now, aside from that, there are two different ways of penetration, which are key terms in the chapter itself. One of which is the depth of penetration, which is the degree of disclosure in a specific area of an individual's life. So in a sense, this means how how many layers that you've unpeeled in within a person's personality, and how deep you have gotten in a conversation with them. You can talk about sports all day long, but you won't ever get to the actual essence of a person, which is what depth of penetration means. Now, the second term is breadth of penetration, which is the range of areas in an individual's life which disclosure takes place. Now, as opposed to the depth, which is how many layers you're peeling, breadth is how many different areas you're actually discussing. So if you're looking at the onion, which is on the screen right now, breadth is how far around the onion, how many different sides of the onion you've seen. So how many different topics you've seen, from food, from movies, to religion, to life, to money, and different things like that. So if you were to try and simplify this theory to its most basic form, it's basically just trying to achieve a different achieve a deeper intimacy with another person through self-disclosure. And the only way that that is possible is through the law of reciprocity, which is a paced or orderly process in which openness in one person leads to openness in the other. That's a quote from the book, and what it basically means is exactly how we run our traditional classroom setting. As much as professors like to stand and lecture in front of the classroom, they also want participation back. So if they're going to be out there saying what they have to say, sometimes disclosing some information about their personal lives, they in turn want participation, and they want that same disclosure to be returned back to them. And this is the same idea that the theory holds. Basically, if I'm going to self-disclose something deep, dark, and personal about my life, maybe about a death in the family, then it may not happen instantaneously, but it's also allowing the person I'm speaking to the confidence that if I'm able to actually disclose this certain depth of information to them, something so personal, then it's actually kind of all right for them to disclose it back if they want to, if they feel comfortable doing it. So one of the ways that you can apply social penetration theory in real life terms would be, as you see on the screen, and it's actually mentioned in the book, the movie Shrek. There's a scene in the movie where he's trying to explain to Donkey how he is an ogre and he has layers, and Donkey humorously misinterprets this and takes the onion metaphor in a completely different direction than Shrek intends it to be, which is pretty funny. It's a pretty funny scene overall, and the book actually mentions it, which is pretty unique, pretty cool also. Another way it could be applied is by doing some research on it. Some of the research that I ended up doing was by Amanda Olson from the University of Gonzaga, and it was pretty interesting to me. It was actually her thesis for her master's degree, and it was on Facebook and social penetration theory. And basically, what her intent was to be able to study Facebook posts and to see how disclosing certain information on Facebook actually made users feel better about themselves and about their self-esteem than if they wouldn't. Amanda used methods like the Likert scale and a Rosenberg self-esteem scale, which measured different levels of agreement through each student, through each participant. Overall, I felt like the whole paper was super simple and concise, which is really good compared to the other research papers that I had to research. They were just overly complex and just full of material, and they're just super jam packed with information that was a little bit overwhelming. This one just made it seem fluid, and it applied the theory well, and it applied the theory to something that wasn't around when the theory was created, and it connects it perfectly. It makes a good comparison, and it sends the theory forward. It progresses the theory into a more modern sense, and it updates the theory. And it's just a good example of a way that social penetration theory can be used nowadays, even though it's 40 years old. Overall, I enjoyed the theory. It was a good theory to be covering throughout the semester. It kept me engaged. It was fun. It is a very helpful theory to have, and it explains a lot as to the everyday communication that we are involved in, and it also helps you to learn a little bit about how other people work as well as how you work, and it gives you a lot of introspect into yourself as a person. Overall, I enjoyed the theory, I enjoyed this class, and thank you for watching.